Today, we are going to talk about moving from small group to large group. Let me tell you, it is not always an easy task. There's always something unique about each and every group. This video is going to help you immensely really roadmap out this process.
Pricing, admin, compliance, and forecasting.
So please hang out until the end. Hi, my name's DeWeese, and I've worked in the area of employee benefits and HR for over 20 years. I've helped a ton of groups transition from small group to large group. Let me tell you, it is not always an easy task. There's always something unique about each and every group and why they're changing, and something unique about their company culture. The fun part about my job is learning about each and every business and exactly what their company culture is, how things are going to impact each and every employee along the way, and make sure that we are presenting the very best plans possible that the company budget can afford. So what we're going to go over today is, why do groups change? There's a couple of different reasons why a group would make a change like this. I'm also going to go over some case examples of groups that I've dealt with just this year on this very topic. So please hang out until the end. I promise this video, if you are in this situation, is going to help you immensely really roadmap out this process. The number one reason why groups move from small group to large group is pricing. Most CEOs, most CFOs, most HR people do not want to go through the daunting task of making a carrier change or disrupting their employee population if there's not some sort of financial incentive there, if it doesn't make sense financially. Which leads me to my second reason why some groups change, and that's for administrative reasons. There may be groups increasingly frustrated with the rate tables for small group, particularly in medical insurance. The health insurance is a complete nightmare when there's a different rate for each and every age within the organization. So someone that's 21 is going to be charged something different than someone that's 23, 24, 25, 20, and so on. Every single year has a different rate. Once employers start offering multiple plans, it can become a real maze and a real administrative nightmare for HR to get payroll deductions. Looking up all these rates, different plans can get dizzying and time consuming. And not just that, but increase human error. The more plans you have, the more likely there is to be human error along the way, either from an HR assistant, from someone in the carrier's office, the broker's office, in the payroll company. If you have too many moving parts in a plan, it is going to increase the likelihood that there are oopsies along the way. Another reason why a group may change is for compliance reasons. If they are running certain compliance filings and reports, having a million different plans with a million different options can be very frustrating for accountants and those filing taxes to figure out the actual liability for the company and what affordability is. If we can minimize the amount of time that HR, admin, and accounting spends on budgeting out these different plans, the better. Another reason is for forecasting. So in small group, if you have let's say a $400 rate for somebody that's 25 and a $800 rate for someone that's 64, it's a little bit more of a pain to forecast growth. If you're planning on hiring 10 people this year and you want to figure out how much it's going to cost you in health insurance, and you pay 100% of the employee-only rate for a certain health insurance plan, you don't know if it's going to be $400 a month or $800 a month, and you certainly don't want to go around making decisions about employing people based off their age. What many CFOs do in this situation is figure out your average demographic, your average age within the group, and base it off of that. But some CFOs don't like doing that and want a true per capita cost when forecasting these growth plans. Simple administration, simplifying administration, I know I brought it up about the rates. However, there can be advantages to moving into a large group plan administratively. Some health insurance carriers on the small group side will not feed information electronically. So when we are being as efficient as we can in our job over here doing benefits administration and we're trying to use an online platform, that online platform will not talk to your health insurance company, or the health insurance company won't talk to the online platform. The online platform is eager to get these carriers in their system and be able to communicate and feed data back and forth. There are some carriers still that are resisting this, which leads employers to have to figure out paper applications, which is a nightmare. If you've ever done paper applications, I started out 20 years ago and that's all we did. We'd go from office to office with paper packets and applications, helping people fill out applications one by one. These online admin systems are so exciting and I absolutely love using them, so much better than what we used to do. But my point is that with large group, we don't have to have any of these silly workarounds. We still use online administration, but on the back end, paper application is still produced. The signature is still electronic. The customer experience from the employee side and the client experience from the HR side is still relatively the same because we're filling in the gaps in the background. We are the exception, not the rule. Not every brokerage offers that much benefits admin support and throws a lot of that on the HR person. The HR person may still be dealing with paper applications, although they may be signed electronically. You still have to physically turn in that application via email and track that enrollment versus entering information into an online enrollment system instead of just doing that one point of entry on that system and that information automatically feeding over to your payroll and to your insurance carrier. There is a paper application generated that the employee does a DocuSign, signs off, exits. Then that application has to be emailed to the carrier for processing and followed up on, because there's all sorts of times where we're emailing things over to the carrier and they say they didn't get it, go back and follow up. So there's all these follow-up processes as a result of turning in these paper applications versus just a one-time feed that goes over. My point is benefits administration can be simpler when dealing with large group. Regulation and compliance, I did touch on this. So if a group is having to do CA compliance and they are trying to figure out where their affordability numbers need to fall, that is a lot easier to calculate with a composite rate versus a wandering, we don't know what this rate's going to be. It depends on the employee's age and it all just depends. Still have to identify people one by one and fill in some safe harbor actions along the way. If you stay in a small group plan or you're forced to stay in a small group plan because you can't get in a large group plan, that can be challenging when it comes time to file those reports. I've had several clients this year go from small group to large group. It's great news. We've got employers growing and have been able to track that growth and use that information to get large group pricing. And there's two different examples I want to talk about. The first is a more traditional route. A group is growing and they hit over 50 in some states or over 100 in other states. It depends on your state, on what your large group definition is. Some states it's over 50, other states it's over 100. Once we see that a group is over 100 full-time employees and it seems to be a consistent, stable number, we start looking at large group options for our clients. And in many cases, it saves about 20%. Usually there's some sort of savings there. Large group business, when a carrier is quoting, they have the right to deny or not quote. In small group, they do have to give you a quote. You have the ability to go to all the carriers, all the health nets and Aetna's, United Healthcare's, all the blues, they all will give you a quote on CA compliant plans, the healthcare reform compliant plans. Now, when you start getting in a large group and we send out quotes, all the carriers may come back and deny it. They may not even want to quote the group. I've seen this happen for healthcare professionals, groups of nurses, hospitals. In the healthcare profession, it can be difficult to find health insurance coverage if you have a large group. But if you have a group that has a lot of males, a lot of young males, a lot of guys that don't go to the doctor, there are ample opportunities for that sort of group to get really great pricing, either through association plans, especially if they're in the trades, if they're in engineering or manufacturing or other sort of specific trade. There are associations out there that you can join and get in on their group coverage. It is technically a large group plan that you are allowed to be a part of as an association. We look at all options with associations on the traditional marketplace. Everywhere we can find coverage that's competitive for our clients is where we're going to go. So that's the traditional route where you are a group growing steadily or rapidly and you start hitting over either the 50 or 100 mark. That's a flag for us to ask for some information. We usually gather a list of all the full-time employees and some of their pertinent information like zip codes, dates of birth, and some other demographic or enrollment type information. Request a quote from carriers in the large group segment. And they are very particular about how they receive this information. It has to be very accurate. It has to show a certain amount of participation. It is very important when you submit a group for a large group quote that you get all of the information in as accurately as possible. If your broker or whoever you're working with to get the quotes, if they send incorrect information or information that shows you are less than 100, it will flag the case and it can be more difficult to get approved later and to negotiate. We have found a lot more success in being very detailed up front, getting all the information we need, making sure that all the information we give to the carrier is what they need and what will present the client in the best light to get the best rates and to show the case will be a good case for a large group. Get those quotes coming in and help save these businesses some money. Now, if you are in this category where you're not quite ready for large group, but you're thinking about it and you think you may be ready in the next 6-12 months, something like that, it would be a good idea to start some sort of tracking. It could just be a spreadsheet wherever you track general accounting information about payroll or payroll taxes. Track how many eligible employees you have each month. If you have a spreadsheet that shows in January, we had 75. In February, we had 78. In March, we had 86. April, we had 92. In July, we had each and every month, you show exactly what your number of eligible employees eligible for benefits. And if you track that will be useful to you later. Just know that is a very important piece that will show your broker or whoever you have working on your benefits administration. Not only will it show what you fall under for COBRA and CalCOBRA, it's also going to show what you qualify for under ACA. If you're a large group, small group, you have to do reporting, and what you will be eligible for in health insurance on the small group versus large group, because these large insurance carriers want to see that you have been over a certain threshold for several months before they're going to take that case on. They want to make sure that you have that 101 stable population and that you commit to staying over that number once you sign up in the large group pool. Now, back to the association plans. I have had many clients who do trades work and qualify for an association plan. We get them set up with an association. We get them enrolled in those benefits, and those are large group plans. The reason why many of these groups do this is to save some money, but also to improve their costs, to improve their offerings. Many times the plans are a little bit better, maybe a little bit richer for their staff. The plans also will be composite rating, meaning that if it's $550 for the employee only rate, it doesn't matter if the employee is 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, or 64 or 20, they will get the same rate regardless of their age. Many employers find that very appealing, and so do employees, especially the older folks who may be paying $1,000+ a month for their health insurance. It's crazy out there for these 64-year-olds. So our process is we search all available plans, look at standard market association plans, large group plans, implementation and communication. In this step-by-step process, we do the census gathering, get all the demographic information to show that it is a true large group. We want an association plan. If you have less than the 50 or 100 required for a large group, we can still get you that option for a health insurance quote with that association. You don't have to have that 50 or 100. The caveat is you will eventually have to join that association. And some of these associations are quite expensive, or they can be. And most of them are based off of how many employees you have. So if you have 10 employees, it's going to be less expensive to join an association than if you have 40 or 50 employees. Like I talked about before, step number 1 is getting the demographic information, the census information to give to the insurance carrier. In some cases, we do want a history of how many eligible employees you have had over the last couple of months, or sometimes even over the prior calendar. Depending on what type of coverage you are getting, the salary information and job titles may also be required in this process. We take that information, go out into the market, look at all the association plans, all of the carriers that do business within the zip codes of your employees. For example, if you have an employee in Texas, one in Florida, 3 in California, 1 in Hawaii, 1 in Illinois, and 1 in Oregon, you want to make sure that you're signing up with an insurance carrier that has great plan options in all of those states. So that is something that the demographic information is used to make sure that we're providing plans that give great coverage for everybody, regardless of what zip code they're in. We do a financial analysis, show you your options, and talk about the different options, try to simplify it as much as we can. Help the employer make a decision, give them the options. Usually employers like to take a couple of days to a week to discuss internally before they make a final decision. We request the decision in writing, just a quick email saying what you want in your contributions, how you want to do your contribution strategy, which exact plans you're picking. And we go from there, start setting up the open enrollment meetings and communication plan with the staff, inviting them to open enrollment meetings. We're recording benefit guides, a series of emails talking about the different plans, the different plan changes, talking about EAPs or other benefits that are being added, part of that strategy to educate employees and bring them up to speed on what their new benefits are going to be and where to go if they have questions. Then we do the educational meeting and talk about all the wonderful benefits, do a Q&A. While we're explaining all the plans, we try to be as entertaining, useful, and educational as possible throughout the meeting. That's one of our goals. Give the employees access to their online enrollment system and walk them through exactly how to enroll, give them a walkthrough demo to show them exactly what the online system is going to look like. And if they have any problems, can't get in the system, login issues, technical assistance, where do they go? What do they do? Who do they ask? Go through all of those housekeeping items and admin, pen to paper sort of items in those open enrollment meetings. Many HR folks and management teams like to give employees a couple of days to a week, some longer, to make their decisions. We want to make sure employees can go home, talk to their spouses, may want to ask questions that the employee doesn't remember from the open enrollment meeting, and come back and ask the benefits management team or the broker and get all of those questions and concerns addressed over that 2-week period. We always want to encourage or remind management that HR needs time to enter in deductions. What I have seen happen before is the executive team gets really excited about saving money and getting new plans and having all this great news for their employees. They want to roll out this plan as soon as possible. We have a week to get the meetings done and another week to get the changes in the system. Might be the effective date, and HR hasn't been able to update the system. For example, let's say I have a call with a client and we talked about some great options that they have that's going to save them some money October 1st. And they say, all right, let me think about it. We'll take this back, go through our next executive team and make a final decision. They come back in a couple of weeks. Let's say it's September 15th. They say, you know what? We want to move forward with that. Let's make it effective. Just know that we are on a crunch now. I can't update anything on my end until I have a decision from my client. We have to update the online enrollment system to make sure all those rates and benefits are accurate in the system the employees are going to be logging into. And if you have payroll systems, that's 6 weeks, heads up to update these systems. Then we update the benefit guide. So the benefit guide we have on file, if you're a current client, we need to update that. If you're a new client, we have to create a whole new benefit guide branded to your company. You want to make sure it looks like it's coming from your company and meshes with your logo and brand design colors. You can use it for onboarding and recruiting new employees. You have something professional to show when a possible new hire asks, what benefits do you offer? You want to be able to show them a nice benefit guide and say, these are the benefits we offer. When that's updated, we can do open enrollment meetings. In these cases where there's crunch time, I often recommend a recorded meeting where I do an online educational meeting and record it, maybe even with no one in the room with me. It's available through a link on a cloud, and employees can view it whenever they want, and their spouses can view it whenever they want. It doesn't have to be this live Teams meeting or this live Zoom meeting. It's a recorded meeting. This allows for some flexibility and also allows me to get to that meeting really quickly, because I can just maybe wake up a little bit earlier one day and record a meeting and get that done for a client versus dealing with an entire company's schedule, right? I may be ready to have the meeting today, but none of the employees are available. Maybe they have executive team meetings. They want to make sure the executives can make it. This other group, they're in a conference, or so-and-so's out sick, or Labor Day's coming up. There's all these reasons why open enrollment meetings get delayed. One thing that I've found to help speed up the timeline is to do recorded meetings and have those available. If employees have follow-up questions, they can email our team directly and we will address those, or set up phone calls for specific questions that may have personal health information. Once we get open enrollment done, the employee is informed. They can make an educated decision about which benefits they may want to move forward at this open enrollment. You want to give them a couple of days to mull it over, to think about it, to talk to their spouse, and perhaps the next Monday is the final deadline to get them entered in. So if we started the timeline for 10/1 on 9/15, when you're a weekend, we got all that done with the grace of God in a week, probably more like 10 days. It depends on how quickly everybody exchanges information back and forth. Let's say best case scenario, it takes a week to do all that. Then we educate the employees and they have to make their decision. So now you're looking at 10/1. It's 10/1. It's October. Employees don't have their new ID cards yet. Maybe HR hasn't had a chance to update payroll, update deductions. Now the employer has to have another executive meeting about payroll. What are we going to do? We didn't update these deductions on time. Are we going to break it up over the entire year, where the biweekly deduction then gets recalculated to be 25? pay periods versus 26. And because employees are catching up, they didn't pay for that increase on that first week. Does the employer waive it, eat the increase for a week or two, and go from there? So there's all sorts of options. Of course, talk to your accountant. I'm not an accountant. I can't advise on IRS related things. Talk to your payroll provider on how to deal with that. But I'm sure you can imagine, even if you aren't in HR and aren't in payroll, how that can be time consuming. And you do have to put a lot of thinking and effort into updating deductions. It's a very important task. And it's very important to be accurate with it. So we need to make sure that those individuals, that admin person that's in charge of updating that, is given adequate time to do their job in a correct, accurate way. Once all that's submitted by October 1st, the new benefits are live and employees don't have their ID cards yet. And Susie's a little disgruntled because she does have a doctor's appointment she needs to go to. Or maybe Tom's spouse is getting cancer treatment and their doctor says they're not active anymore. And where's the ID information? So there's troubleshooting we can do to get people the information they need. Those are all discussions that we have with our clients as to how to troubleshoot these things and who needs to go to the doctor and when, and how quickly we can turn around in underwriting. One thing I've seen with employers and some assumptions in the executive HR team is that once we submit the applications, the carrier processes the changes, they get entered in the system, and everything's good to go. That may be the case if you don't change carriers, but if you're moving from small group to large group, even if you're staying with the same carrier, you're still changing systems. So it's like going with a whole new carrier. UHC small group is different than UHC large group. Aetna small group is a different process and system than Aetna large group. They may have some assistance to help you transition. I have seen some carriers that will help the transition from small group to large group, but it's not that common anymore. Carrier support, in some cases, has gone downhill. In some cases, they've gotten better. It's not a guarantee. Regardless, you still have to go through underwriting. It's like asking the bank for a mortgage and expecting to not have to go through underwriting. You have to prove you're a legitimate business with legitimate employees. They have to give you an approval letter. Even though they have given you a quote, they've given you an intent to do business together, and that quote does stand as long as you meet the requirements of that quote, which is vetted in the underwriting process. They make sure all their ducks are in a row. My point is that the actual implementation, the person going through each application and entering all the data to get that person enrolled and active in that system, that part doesn't happen until underwriting's done. They will not even start entering anybody's information into any system for showing active enrollment until underwriting is done. Once we get the applications, we submit it to the carrier. That technically goes to the underwriter, and they review everything and have to approve it. And that usually takes at least a week, sometimes 2, sometimes 4. If it is a 4-week one, I would probably be able to tell somebody ahead of time, like, hey, this one is complicated. It's going to take longer. We need a longer time horizon to work this one out. The underwriter's going to ask about this, and then they're probably, once they get that, they're going to ask about this, and then they might ask about this. Just depends on how many rounds of questions there are with the underwriter. If we can get 1 round, 2 rounds, 3 rounds, we're going to go through pretty quickly, 1-2 weeks, depending on the turnaround time with the broker and the client. As long as the HR person is engaged and getting us answers as quickly as possible, it can move pretty quickly. We talked about the case where it's a small group, they're in the trades, maybe like an engineer, something like that. We're able to get them into an association plan, save them some money, get them in a large group plan. They're still technically a small group. They're enrolled in a large group plan and getting those composite rates. Option 2 is the group has been growing. They outgrew the small group market, and now they are eligible for large group. We're able to transition them into a large group plan, save some money, and simplify things administratively. This is where my anti-sales lady hat comes on. And this is why my clients love me, because I am a salesperson, but I do like to tell everybody upfront what downsides I see right out of the gate. And that way my clients can make a decision. I can sleep well at night because I told everybody everything I know about the decision they're making. There's no perfect solution. Every solution is going to have a downside, and you have to pick the downside that you like most sometimes, right? Health insurance is not a perfect solution. There are all sorts of problems with our healthcare system. The employer that is offering health insurance wants to take care of their employees. They want to attract and retain the very best talent. They want to grow their business with the very best people. They see value in their employees and their company culture and investing in their employees and their talent. So in that case, with an employer with that mindset, health insurance is necessary. They view it as very important, and their employees value it very much. If they were to get rid of it, all hell would break loose. So the employer decides we're going to continue to offer health insurance year after year. They're taking hits, all these increases, 10% to 20% some years, 5% others when they get lucky. Finally get to a place where they can get in large group. They get the composite rates, and there's a handful of employees that they look at on those rates. And those employees' rates are going to go up 20%, 30%, 50%, maybe even 100%. But the rest of the group saves money. What do you do? How do you solve that problem? Those are the discussions that we have during these transitions. It's not going to be sunshine, rainbows, and unicorns for every single employee. When you're going from 60 different rates based off of somebody's age, and you put them on a plan that's got the same rate for everybody and maybe even less options, somebody's going to get left out in the cold. And it's up to the employer and their executive team on what they're going to do for that employee, how they're going to accommodate that employee, if they're going to accommodate that employee at all, if they are going to encourage the employee to go to a different plan, try a different plan. There's a bunch of different discussions in these sorts of reviews when these things come about. It's really exciting for me when I find a solution. I find a great association plan. I find a large group product that's going to save my client money. I get so excited. I love giving good news. I love being the hero. But again, the hard part, it is a change, and employees get scared during changes. If 1 out of 20 employees ends up paying $300 more a month for their health insurance, and that employee makes a stink about it and talks to everybody in the company and tells them all about how bad the plan is, I've seen these things grow. You might see where one employee out of the whole bunch is maybe ends up paying, let's say, a couple $100 more, $300 more a month, which is a lot. Maybe they're paying more per month, and they're in the break room talking to John, and they say, I hate this plan. I went to the doctor and I'm paying all this extra money. My rates went up. And then John might be sitting there going, I don't remember my rates. Me? Yeah, our rates went up. I've seen these things happen where one employee starts fussing about the plan and the other ones go, oh, really? I didn't know that, not knowing that it was different for everybody. So anyway, there's all kinds of reasons why we need to talk about this and make sure that when we do these transitions, there's going to be some disruption. Not every single employee is going to be happy. There will be someone left out in the cold, and that someone may be upset. So it's important for the employer, the HR, to talk to this person and let them know what's coming or how they're going to be accommodated or what's going to happen, and over communicate. Yeah, that's another thing that I see that I definitely wanted to bring up, that it's not all sunshine and rainbows. All right, so we're going to wrap up. So admin capacity. What do you need to be thinking about when you're thinking about going from small group to large group? Can your administrative team handle it? Me and my team are going to be asking them all kinds of questions and they need to be able to answer it. And we might be annoying to them, but in a good way, and doing our due diligence and getting all the information we need to get the best quotes for you and your company. But that admin team needs to know that it's going to pay off in the end. This is what we need to do and have the capacity to do it, be given the time to do it, be allowed to make it a priority. I've seen where someone on the executive team may not be 100% behind quoting all these options and may put it on the back burner. And as a result, because the leader's putting it on the back burner, the admin person sloughs it off or it doesn't get done. Make sure your admin has capacity, make sure leadership is communicating that it is a priority and that you would like to get it done. Also looking at the company culture timeline, like what's happened recently in the business. You might get some great options in front of you, but if there's been any kind of merger or acquisition or new owner coming in, I would say don't change. Because if you work for a smaller company and then bigger company comes in and buys it, you have a new operator assigned to run the business. Even just word getting out among staff that there's been a change in ownership makes everybody a little nervous. Then a couple months later, they come out and say, hey, we're changing your health benefits. And hey, we're changing this. Sometimes if there's been a major change, still look at options. It might be better to do it the following year. If things settle down and get a little bit more consistent and the company culture is able to take that change, if they're resilient enough to move forward with a change like that quickly. And you know better than I do. You know your company, you know your culture better than I do. These are just things I've seen over the years. I always encourage executives, HR, to put ourselves in the employee's shoes. Look at the papers that the employee is going to be looking at. Look at the rates the employee is going to be looking at. Look at what it costs them now and what it's going to cost them on the new plan. Especially for those that it may not be the greatest. Everybody else is saving, let's say 20%, which is awesome. 80, 90% of the group is going to be happy with the change. Maybe there's that 10% where the $300 a month increase for them. Or did they just have a baby? What's going on in their life? These are things to think about, to talk to them about. Who benefits, who doesn't? And how can we accommodate which employees are negatively affected by any of these changes? The negative effects can maybe not even just be in the rates, but in the network. I've seen where employee A may be very happy with their network and the plans. The company has to cut costs, so they end up on a cheaper option and their doctor isn't on that cheaper option anymore. That is really hard for people. Just spitballing some of the things I see that come up through changing from small group to large group. We see costs decrease. We see admin improve, get easier. Of course, the transition part is not easy, but once the transition is done, admin eventually gets easier. Accounting, forecasting becomes more simplified with composite rates versus awful age-banded rates. The downside is likely somebody's going to get left out in the cold. You'll probably have an employee or two that may not benefit from the change, but the rest of the group does. Those are unique conversations that need to be had with each group. They're very specific. I think I've given you some examples of what can happen in that transition. Take your time. You don't have to do it overnight. The options aren't going anywhere. They can always be renegotiated. Similar options will be available next year. My point is I've seen it go sideways. So it's better to take your time, do it right the first time you go from small group to large group. All right. So thank you for hanging out until the end. If you have any questions, you can leave a comment down below. If you want a one-on-one with me, want me to assess your plan, I have a link down below to a questionnaire to sign up for a free 30-minute phone call with me to go over your plan and your options, see if there's anything I can do to help, we'll see you next time. Bye.